Welcome back to Her Rules Radio. I'm Alex Jamison, your hostess. It is August 2020, and guess what? This week's episode is brought to you by our new book, Radical Alignment. It's the book coming out August 11th that I co-authored with my dear, amazing husband, Bob Gower. Our book, Radical Alignment, will help you have game-changing conversations that will transform your business and your life. And believe me, it took me 30-ish years to start mastering the tools that we teach you in this book. But today, I want to talk about one of the most important sections in this book, which I have talked about here on the show before. And I'm actually going to read to you from the book itself. We just got beautiful hardcover copies in the mail in the last 24 hours. I'm so excited about them. I'm going to be talking about boundaries, how to make them, how to get clear about them, and how to keep them, right? It's not just about getting clear on them. It's about expressing them and then standing up for them. So what are boundaries? Here we go. I'm reading straight from Radical Alignment. Boundaries are your personal non-negotiables. They are a line that you won't cross yourself or a line that others aren't welcome to cross. Boundaries stem from rules individuals have in place, often around self-care, family, and community commitments. They work best when they are firm rather than vague and too flexible. Now, ideally, you have strong boundaries in both personal relationships and at work. But honestly, this is an area in which many of us need a bit of help and permission to be clear. For instance, we don't often have conversations about personal boundaries in professional contexts because often the assumption is that work comes before everything else. But if we don't encourage good personal boundaries at work, we're creating an environment that isn't conducive to creativity or productivity. If we want people to do their best work, by the way, that's including you and your children at home, we must encourage them to be at their best when on the job. And being at their best means being well rested, well fed, and free of distractions. In other words, engaging in self-care. Now, we all have competing commitments, family, community, and projects at work. Letting the listener that you're talking with, letting the other person know up front about our commitments outside of the topic at hand is important. It helps us become allies for each other and collectively create a team environment that helps us be fully present as individuals. You can think of boundaries as design criteria for a shared experience. Designers will tell you that constraints or rules are needed to generate creativity and that no good design happens without them. As you discuss each person's personal boundaries, you articulate what the team needs to be at its best. This goes for families and couples too. It is kind to share your boundaries with others because inadvertently violating a boundary can cause stress, destroy trust, and even irrevocably harm relationships. A useful concept in articulating boundaries comes from the psychology of habit change. It's called a bright line. Bright lines are easy to understand binary rules. That means like black and white, yes or no, no ambiguity, no gray area. You're either on one side of the line or the other. There's no in-between state. These kind of easy to understand rules are so valuable in establishing good habits because we know when we're following them and when we aren't. So we don't have to think too much about whether or not we're on track. For instance, if we're trying to eat better, bright lines such as eat green vegetables at every meal and eat no processed sugar are less effortful, like they take less brain power and willpower to monitor than vague rules such as try to eat less or don't eat so much junk. When it comes to work habits, bright lines help us preserve our energy and focus and take care of what is important to us outside of work. Knowing we can cover all of our obligations means that during work hours, we can bring more of ourselves to the task. It's important. I just made up a new word. It's important that the listener hear the other person's boundaries when you're sharing with each other and only ask clarifying questions if you don't quite understand. This is not the time to argue about what's going to happen, quarrel about what has happened, or make judgmental comments. This is a time to listen and allow each speaker to get clear. Imagine what your life would be like if you had the relationship dynamics and understanding with the people that mattered most, that when you were expressing your desired boundaries, they were really received. How would that be? Another kind of boundary we might explore at this point is shared agreements. These can be like guardrails inside of which a team or individuals or your family are empowered to act without seeking approval, such as spending limits or who's going to take care of this domain of questions. They can also be shared working agreements that address a specific concern. For instance, if we're concerned that there is more work to do than time allows, then we may set a boundary that will prioritize together the must-haves for the project before we get started. So a boundary could be we're going to do A before B and B before C. Or if we're concerned that stuff from other parts of your family life or organization might be hostile to this project or this topic you're talking about, we might set a boundary that will proactively reach out to other leaders or other important family members to make sure they are on board. If you see an opportunity to suggest a shared boundary, it can be a useful short conversational detour at this time, or you can write it on a note and address it later. So a couple of questions that can help tease out both personal self-care and project boundaries. What self-care rules will help you be and do your best? What rules or standards will help this team be the best? What are you 100% unwilling to do when it comes to this experience? What are the times and what are the items that need to be addressed in this project? What should never be changed about our product, organization, group, or family in this experience? Some common personal boundaries we hear are, I won't work on the weekends. I only answer emails during work hours. I eat dinner at 6 with my family every weekday. I exercise 3 times a week on my lunch hour. I have to give another project at least 25% of my attention. So you might find that stating your boundaries is challenging. Even articulating them to yourself can be a challenge at first. If this happens, try thinking of the boundaries you express as starter boundaries, like you're just giving it your best shot, right? They can get clearer and more crisp and more definite as you go forward, but you do want to give them your best try. And 2 of my absolute favorite questions to help you discover what your boundaries are for any particular situation, project, experience, or relationship is, what do I need to be my best And that really covers the self-care things like what's going to give me the energy, the clarity, the confidence to help me show up strong and vulnerable and present. So again, that question is, what is going to help me be my best? The other question is, what do I need to feel safe? It's a very different question, but it's just as important because you want to feel protected and grounded, and you want to feel expansive, generative, and empowered. So use those two questions. What do I need to feel safe? And what do I need to be my best? In many ways, boundaries are the crux of the whole conversation, and often the most unfamiliar to people going through a tough conversation for the first time. Now, in our book, Radical Alignment, you will practice and master the all-in method, which has a section for sharing your boundaries. And the more you practice using the all-in method, you will become both more comfortable hearing about other people's boundaries and sharing your own. It is a vital life skill that many of us need to get stronger with and better with now. And let me tell you some of the benefits that I have experienced in my own life and work. Let me start with the most popular boundary that I have that people notice, that gets me more comments and emails than anything else, is the little pre-programmed signature that goes at the bottom of my emails. So if you email me and I email you back, you'll get a little message that's plunked in at the bottom of every single email. It says, P.S. To walk my talk, I only answer emails between working hours during the work week. And because I only look at my email a couple of times a day, it may be 24 to 48 hours before I get back to you. If you email me on a Friday, you may not hear back from me until Monday. That's it. Most people who reply and comment about that little PS love it. They're like, oh, that is so great. I am totally using that. And then they start using it to help them have a boundary with their time and how much energy they're going to lose switching back and forth between work and email, responding to other people's queries, etc. Like, I'm very responsive to my emails. I just have learned that if I keep dipping in all day long, keep going back to email, I lose a lot of my willpower. I expend a lot of energy there. And since I have writing and coaching and podcasting and all these other things on my plate, I need to preserve that energy for my more creative, professional projects. So yes, email is important, but I want people to know up front when they email me that my reply may take a little bit longer than they're used to. Every once in a while, somebody gets a little irritated with that boundary, but that's okay. I often use that, especially if it's with someone who's inquiring about coaching. I will use that as an opportunity to say, what is concerning about my boundary around my time for you? Do you have good boundaries around your time? I'll ask something like that. So that's one of my favorite professional stories of effective boundaries. And one of my favorite personal stories around boundaries is actually with my husband. And this was something that took us a few years to learn. It took me a few years to get clear about this. But we had this dynamic in the first few years of living together where one of us, usually Bob, would bring up an important topic to discuss right before bed, like as we were getting into bed. And it took me a couple of years to realize that I am not an effective communicator right before bed. As I'm getting ready to go to bed, my brain is powering down. I do not enjoy talking about heavy, emotional, or important topics before bed. And I want to engage and be present and be a good partner. So it took me a while to realize, hey, we need to talk about things before bed, like way before bed, not as we're getting ready to go to sleep. Because I'm impatient, I'm not clear, I'm grouchy, and I just want to get through it. I don't really have the energy to bring my full self to it. So one of our new relationship boundaries we have with each other is we don't bring up heavy topics late in the evening. We're a lot better communicators that way. So this is just a slice of the wisdom that you will get from our new book, Radical Alignment. We really are so excited. We're getting great responses to the early readers of the book. We're going to be teaching it to some educational organizations in the next week. And our dear friend Rebecca Barucki at Beck's Life is using the all-in method as the central lesson and theme for her new children's book, Zara's Big Messy Playdate. We are over the moon thrilled about that. It is basically a dream come true for something that I helped to create, get into a kid's book. It's so exciting. So I really want to encourage you to go and pre-order your copy of Radical Alignment before August 11th, 2020. Go to radicalalignmentbook.com, buy the book anywhere online, and go back to the book page, radicalalignmentbook.com. You'll see a form there. You can just plunk in your name, email, and order number wherever you ordered it from, and we'll sign you up for a free live workshop with me and Bob to help you master the all-in method so that you can start having these rules of engagement, these rules for how to effectively, compassionately, and really proactively have great communication in your life and in your work. Thank you so much for listening. So go to radicalalignmentbook.com, pre-order your book wherever, your local independent bookstore, Amazon, Kindle, whatevs. Let me know that you bought it. Shoot us your little invoice number. Cannot wait to really help you master the all-in method and all the other techniques from Radical Alignment. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Mwah!